Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are diving deep into the international response to the, well, intensifying crisis in Gaza.
Hmm.
We've looked at a stack of sources for this dive, and we're focusing today on one that gives us a snapshot of humanitarian and diplomatic actions. Think countries like China, Mexico.
Right, and our mission here is really to pull out the crucial insights. What are the surprising bits? What does this specific source tell us about how nations are reacting right now?
Because it does seem, as things escalate, the international community isn't just watching anymore.
No, definitely not. This source suggests they're responding maybe more assertively than before.
And you can really see that assertiveness in the actions described. China, for instance.
Yeah, China. The source calls their move pretty significant. It's framed specifically as like breaking a siege, bringing hope.
Okay, breaking a siege. How so? What did they actually do?
Well, what's striking, according to this material, is how they did it. They sent multiple flights. We're talking tons of essential aid, food, water, medicine, hygiene stuff,
Yep.
directly to Gaza. And the source notes this was done while, well, navigating or maybe deliberately challenging the existing restrictions, kind of defying an air blockade.
Defying a blockade. That does sound like a shift. Did the source give any insight into the why? China's reasoning?
It suggests China's government was quite explicit. They basically stated they wouldn't be stopped by sanctions or restrictions when it came to humanitarian aid.
Okay.
And they used strong language publicly, too, like at the UN, condemning what they called indiscriminate bombings, pushing for international humanitarian law. The source even mentions them using the term an ongoing genocide to describe it, pushing hard for an immediate stop to the fighting.
So it's not just the aid delivery itself. It's paired with really pointed diplomatic language, a clear statement of principle from their viewpoint.
Exactly.
The source seems to frame this as China trying to step, not just economically, but, asserting a kind of moral or diplomatic leadership role, maybe influencing things regionally.
That's the picture it paints. A calculated move, using both real aid and sharp words drawn from their interpretation of international law and the crisis itself. It's presented as an assertion of their global standing.
Okay. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's look at Mexico. The source highlights their response, too.
Yeah, it does. Mexico took a strong humanitarian stand.
How did that look?
They also sent aircraft, loaded with supplies, food, medical aid, delivered via the Egyptian border posts, using those established humanitarian corridors into Gaza.
Right, the established routes. And the source pulled out a quote from the Mexican president.
Yes, quite powerful, saying something like, "No nation can remain silent in the face of the massacre of innocents." And he specifically called for a coordinated multilateral approach to protect Palestinian human rights.
And this is where the source suggests Mexico's actions had a kind of ripple effect.
That's right. By taking that clear stance, using that language, Mexico is seen in this source material as having inspired other Latin American nations.
Interesting. Inspired how?
Well, the material notes countries like Bolivia, Brazil, Chile. They reportedly echoed the call for a ceasefire, stressed the need for continuous aid. Some apparently even imposed what the source calls symbolic diplomatic sanctions. So it suggests Mexico's position helped, kickstart a regional response based on those shared humanitarian concerns.
Okay, so you've got these distinct approaches. China's direct aid, challenging restrictions, strong UN talk, and Mexico's humanitarian shipments tied to these multilateral calls that really resonated in Latin America.
Exactly. Different tactics, maybe complementary in some ways. And the source connects these country actions to something broader. It calls it a global movement of conscience.
Ah, so that's where the public reaction comes in.
Precisely. The source mentions a real surge in protests, demonstrations, people demanding accountability.
Where was this happening?
All over, really. Cities like Paris, London, New Delhi, São Paulo, Mexico City. It shows widespread public concern, according to the source.
And alongside that public pressure, the source points to more focus on international bodies, the UN.
Yeah, definitely. It notes the UN is under, well, significant pressure. There's talk of independent investigations into alleged war crimes by both sides.
Okay.
And, ongoing work, drafting new resolutions in the Security Council to try and deal with the crisis.
Right. So let's try and bring this together then. What this source gives us is a picture of, well, different countries stepping up in their own ways.
Mm-hmm.
You have China's bold aid move, sort of bypassing obstacles, plus its diplomatic push. Then Mexico's humanitarian focus, sparking that regional action in Latin America.
And all this is happening against that background of global protests, and increasing pressure on the UN system itself.
Yeah, it's a mix, delivering vital stuff, food, water, medicine, but also making these strong diplomatic statements internationally.
It paints a picture of diverse strategies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Different levels of engagement from around the world, reflecting their own priorities, their own abilities, but together showing a kind of heightened global reaction.
Absolutely. So here's something to think about, a final thought based on this dive for you, the listener. When you look at all these different actions, China's assertiveness, Mexico inspiring regional responses, the global protests, the pressure on the UN, what might this suggest? Does it hint at maybe a shift in international influence or how the world might respond to big humanitarian crises going forward?
Yeah, something definitely worth considering as you process all this information.